Ha! First time you were running, and I would have died because my cardio sucks. But now you're out in the Scorch. It's time to get strong. That's where I got you beat. There's more running, isn't there? Son of a... Hey everyone, David here. So Hollywood's next attempt in order to create a young adult saga so that they can make money out of, we got the sequel to last year's The Maze Runner, and because it's a bit more profitable to make a movie 1 year after the previous because they just gotta get this shit out real quick, we now have Maze Runner: The Scorch Trials. Now, to be fair, I was kind of interested in this movie because I actually kind of liked the first one. So when that ending kept, banging on our head saying, hello, there's gonna be a sequel, get ready for it, hello, is there anybody in there? I kinda wanna watch Back to the Future now. I was like, okay, if you're gonna do a sequel, you better do it right. So now we got the Scorch Trials. And in the Scorch Trials, we find Thomas and his group of friends having escaped the maze from the first movie. Spoilers a little bit, sorry, even though the trailer kinda gives it away. We have Thomas and his group of comrades from the Glade in the first movie escaping the maze, but now they find themselves in the Scorch amongst friends and enemies and the mysteries that haunt them from their past, and trying to figure out why exactly, things are just happening. Because honestly, that's what this movie entails. Like, why is Thomas so important? And they keep hinting at it. And let's just say that I'm left wondering certain questions at the end of this movie, the same exact questions that I was wondering to myself at the beginning of the movie. And that's because the movie's pretty light on its plot. For a sequel that's supposed to kind of answer certain questions that we were left wondering at the end of the last movie, especially with that ending, you're supposed to kind of provide us with those answers, and unfortunately this movie doesn't really do all that much. It kind of feeds you just tidbits, but it's like they're saving it up for that third movie, so that it's, they're kind of forcing you to go see that third movie if you want the answers for that. Otherwise, go read the books. This is what my girlfriend's gonna do, and I'm just too lazy, and occasionally I'm too busy to be doing that. I'm too busy watching the movies, the movie versions of those books, or playing video games, or doing other things with my time. I know that sounds kind of cynical, but to be honest, that's just how it feels. Like, there's something about the sequel that makes me go, holy shit, this is better than the first, because there's, plot-wise, I like for my story to take turns, and I want my characters to be developed. And here, in this movie, they kind of introduce characters so quickly in this movie that not only do our old characters from the first one get any kind of development whatsoever, but even those new characters don't get any development because they introduce one after another. I swear to God, there's a scene towards the end of the movie where our characters meet some new people. Those people then take them to a new location, and in that location, within a span of 5 minutes, we get introduced to the leader of that group, of that settlement there, and then right afterwards we get introduced to this other character who's gonna reveal some information about Thomas and the story and the background, and all that. We just got meeting with this leader with this, entrance that's supposed to be some kind of big deal considering the actor that's playing this character, and the way the camera kind of builds up saying, look, this is the person who's in charge. But then we get to this other character, and they're just going left and right to introduce to you all these characters within a span of 2 hours, that when a character does get picked off, you don't really care, and a couple of them do die. I'm not going to say who, but by the end of the movie, at least some of the old characters and some of the new characters bite the dust, and I didn't really care. Some people were like, oh my God, and I'm just like, where are my Skittles at? That's not to say that every single character is wasted. Thomas, our main character, because this is the second time around that we're seeing him, and we spent all this time with him, despite his character going through the similar notions that he did in the first movie. I mean, there are so many scenes that are completely lifted from the first one where it's Thomas either running, big surprise, or him going into, meeting up with his friends. His friends are like, what's going on? Thomas, what's going on? And he's like, we gotta get out of here. But I will admit, there was something endearing about him in the second film, because we've seen him go through all this stuff that I kind of understand why he's so panicked, why he's so driven to get some answers. So I found him a little bit more compelling than in the first one. And out of all the new characters that were introduced in this movie, there were two that kind of grabbed my attention. One of them is Jorge, played by Breaking Bad's Giancarlo Esposito, and he was one of the characters that I was looking forward to the most, not only because of the actor who was playing him, but also because he was going to embody that figure that's supposed to feel like a leader, but also kind of warm. And at first, he felt a little off. Like, the way he's introduced, I'm like, oh, he's this type of character. I was hoping for something different, but what I was hoping for is eventually what he kind of transformed into as the movie progressed, and he was one of the more likable characters. I mean, he didn't exactly steal the show like I was hoping he would because of the actor that was playing him, but he embodied that persona. He did. The actor worked with what he had in terms of material, and I think he really honed the character in. Now we got this son of a bitch, Jansen, played by Aidan Gillen, who I believe is from Game of Thrones. I don't watch the show, but I've seen like scenes, like promotional stills from the show, and I recognize his face. He has that face that you just love to hate, and he played that villain role really well. Like, every time he was on screen, you're just like, oh my god, I hope he gets it. Like, so many people hated him on screen, but they hated him in the sense that they loved to hate him. Like, he really made for a good villain. It would just be kind of cool that in the third one they kind of mold him more a little bit. They give him some backstory to kind of give him like a tragic background or something that makes him a very good villain. Because, like I said, a great villain, like I've said many times before, a great villain is not just a villain that's like, haha, I'm the bad guy, blah, blah, blah. Like, there's something there that makes him evil, that maybe he used to be good or something like that, and something changed him, or just something makes him believe that he's right. And I feel like maybe, just maybe, they'll do that in the third movie, in the next installment with his character, because I feel like there might be something there, and this actor is really good at portraying that type of villain. It's just that I would be so disappointed if they don't do that, but let's just hope, there's still hope for that. But I feel like Aidan Gillen played the role very, very well. I mean, he's just got that face. He's throughout, like 90% of the movie, he's got that smirk, like that, you can trust me. He talks like this all the time. That's one of the reasons why Thomas felt so compelling at the beginning, is because the rest of his friends were just like, hey, they provided us food and water. I mean, we could trust them. I mean, why should we turn our backs on them? And Tom is just like... And much like with the first movie, I have to give credit to some aspects to the direction as well as the cinematography, because I do believe that this was a well-made film on a technical level. Sure, it suffers from some script writing issues, but this is still a really good-looking film. Some of the cinematography is really great. Some shots really captivated me. I thought that they looked cool. I felt like they made the Scorch look great, even though there's a sudden shift in budgetry. Budgetry, if that's even a word. But you go from this large-scale environment where you got destroyed buildings, it looks like the apocalypse legitimately hit, and then you go from that to like what The Walking Dead does with Georgia, in which we go from Atlanta to the woods. And sometimes that can work, sometimes it can't. And here I felt like it was just a little bit too obvious that maybe the budget, it was getting a little too high. So they're like, oh, we gotta get out of here. We gotta go to this area here in the Rocky Mountains, where they could have easily filmed it here, somewhere here in the high desert. But still, they worked with what they had, and some of the cinematography still looked great, even in those environments. And some of the special effects, as well as some of the action, was really cool. I mean, never was I at my edge of my seat, and maybe I'm being a little too harsh on the movie to be quite honest, but still, there was some moments where I felt like that had potential in being being a great action sequence that could have had me. But ever so often I would see inspiration from other things, and I felt like the movie was trying to be those other things. Let's just say that there's a scene that was completely lifted from The Lost World Jurassic Park. I mean, it's like the director just saw the movie the night before, and like, you know what, let's put that in there. It worked for that movie, and to give them credit, I can understand why they wanted to put it in there, because it was one of the best scenes out of that movie, out of that Lost World movie, and they went ahead and put it in here. And on the note of taking inspiration from other movies, there's a new danger added to this movie. I mean, in the first one, you got the maze itself, as well as the creatures that inhabit it. Here, we got the Scorch, as well as those creatures that lurk in the darkness. In which, this case, it's the people who were infected from the virus that wiped out all humanity outside of the mazes and the compounds and the evil corporation that's in charge of all that. And oh man, these creatures, they were cool. But instead of making me want to see more of the creatures, I just wanted to go and play The Last of Us. Because I swear to God, these creatures, these zombie-like infected people are a love child of the zombies from The Walking Dead, the creatures from the creatures from I Am Legend, and the infected from The Last of Us. Especially when we get down to the sewers and we see them getting riddled with brands and stuff like that. They were a cool effect, but they just reminded me an awful lot of those other things that they were probably taking inspiration from. And it didn't feel like a direct ripoff. It just reminded me more of that stuff and made me want to go revisit that other stuff, especially The Last of Us, because I am so overdue to playing that remastered version. However, that is not the main reason why I gotta say that I prefer the first movie over this one. I mean, a lot of people are saying, you know, the critics out there are saying Scorch Trials is better than the first one. This is a step beyond. This is a better improved movie. In my opinion, I prefer the first one over this one. There was something about that first one and how claustrophobic it felt to be inside that maze, and the fact that that maze was changing every night, so none of them knew exactly how to map it out. That was immensely intriguing to me. That intrigue, that mystery, is kind of gone with this second movie because it just took too many pages from that typical post-apocalyptic genre and saying, okay, here we got our creatures that are chasing our characters. Here are the red shirts that are going to be, getting picked off one by one in that typical way that they do in zombie movies, whether it be or TV shows like in the case with The Walking Dead or just other properties, even video games like The Last of Us, but just not necessarily as deep because again, we don't have enough time to like some of these characters so that whenever they're put in danger, I honestly don't care. So many of Thomas's friends are just in the background this time. I mean, I recognize them from the first movie because in that movie they felt a little bit more distinct, especially when they're kind of introducing themselves to Thomas and they're saying, hey, welcome to the Glade, this is our thing, this is that kind of thing. Here, they're just as unbeknownst to everything else, just like Thomas is, so they're kind of on that similar level, except they just don't get as fleshed out. There's even a new character that gets added to that cast of characters, to Thomas's group, and I can barely remember anything about him because he's just there. Alright, the beginning of the movie makes him seem like he's gonna be this catalyst to the whole thing, this key to like getting Thomas out of the clutches of the bad guys. But then as soon as that happens, poof, he just blends in with the background and there's just nothing to him. And it's the same thing. The same thing could be said not just about the old characters from the first movie, but also some of the new ones that get added, with the exception of Jorge Giancarlo Esposito's character and one of the villains, because we get a much closer look at the main villain, so to speak, the main villain that Thomas promises he's gonna go after by the end of this movie. And that main villain. Again, nothing really that interesting about this person, aside from the fact that much like every single villain these days, and especially in young adult novels, has to wear white. All white. Apparently now white is the villainous color. But yeah, it just felt just a tad bit more generic than the first one. And so for that, I gotta give Maze Runner: The Scorch Trials a... This is gonna be a tough one. But the more I think about it, the more I felt just slightly disappointed. So I'm going to give it a high 6 out of 10. It was borderline 7, but then just it cuts off at a point where it's just very generic. Like, okay, this happened. Plus, it took a character and just made that character unlikable from the first one. I mean, in the first one, I felt like maybe there was potential to this character, but then by the ending of this one, this character became even more frustrating because not only do they do something that makes you want to type in Twitter, hashtag fuck this character, but also they do the classic thing of not telling the main character and the group something that is going on, and instead they're just like, oh, you don't understand, you wouldn't understand, you have to understand. Well, then just tell them. It's just so frustrating, and man, it might just it might have been in the book as well, but if so, then hey, that's a flaw with the book as well. But that's just me. Anyways, let me know what you guys thought of Maze Runner: The Scorch Trials. If you have seen it, or you'll be going to watch it, and are you looking forward to the next installment, which I believe, and it's a little bit too early to tell in my opinion, because at this point they could just change things. They could just change the plans and, you know, change it all together. But right now, it is believed that the next installment, which is the third one, will actually be the final one. They're not going to do the thing that every young adult adaptation needs to do now, which is to break the final installment into 2 parts, part 1 and part 2. The Divergent series is doing it. Hunger Games is barely closing out. Twilight did it. Harry Potter was the first to do it, so that's the exception. But it looks like Maze Runner will actually end with one actual final film, which I'm really hoping they do, and it's rumored to come out around 2017. But considering that it's 2 years from now, there's plenty of time for them to be like, snip, part 1 and part 2. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. See you guys next time.